We're on WDXE. Now we're coming to play. You're fine over there, Blake. Now you're coming to play radio, Blake.
Yes, okay.
Okay, we're just going to go straight into. As soon as you turn your mics on.
And that is 5.
You're 1 and 2.
1 and 2. You ready?
I am ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I'm ready. I was born ready.
That'll be the computer to come back to.
I don't know why anybody would ever ask me if I'm ready, because I'm always ready.
I'll just come back on.
Ready,
Turn you
steady,
on.
ready.
All right.
So this is supposed to be down?
It's off.
Are we on? Is everything working?
1,
Are we
2,
streaming?
3. We're live.
Finally.
Yes.
I've been here for like 30 minutes waiting. Actually, I was 3 minutes early, and there's a reason why. Hey, this is the local law enforcement hour. I'm Sheriff John Myers with Captain Blake Grooms with the Lawrenceburg City Police Department. You need to go on ahead and say your where's your pre-recorded
so
that you do?
Maddie left, and that kind of just messed things up. We miss her, especially because sometimes she was good at pressing buttons and sometimes she wasn't.
Yeah, sometimes it was a major fail.
Right, like beat your head against the wall fail. But when it's kind of like that old baseball player, when they're good, they're amazing.
Yeah.
But when it's a bad day, it's a bad day for everybody.
It's terrible. There's no in between. There's no gray area.
So yes, some of the things that I may say and share today are my opinions and my views alone. In no way, shape, or form are they to reflect the opinions and views of the Lawrenceburg Police Department and the city of Lawrenceburg. Got it. So let's get started.
Why are you in town? Why are you not why are you not at the beach with everybody else that's on spring break?
Well, so I'm a tightwad. I'm just a tightwad. Prices are hiked up this time of year.
You can't take it with you.
You're right.
You can't take it with you.
You're right.
Do you like the beach?
I love the beach.
I could spend the rest of my days on the beach.
Yes, sir.
And I would love to go. Matter of fact, we had a conference set up this month, and it fell through for whatever reason. I can't remember why it fell through, but we had a conference set up down in Desden or somewhere that we was going to try to go to.
You know where I'd love to go? Fort Walton.
Mm-hmm.
It is considered the prettiest water in the Panhandle, and especially in October, because that's when like the starfish and the sand dollars come in, and a rowdy kid easily can go into shallow water and pick up like 300 starfish.
Best time to go anyway.
Oh yeah, of course.
After all the crowds are gone from the summer and it's starting to cool off just a little bit. I always go when it's super hot.
Man.
And I mean, it's when you got to get in the water like every 30 minutes or you're going to die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And see, I'm fat, so that's like every 15 minutes for me.
So it's that 30 minutes you got to get up and go every 15.
Right.
That's great.
So you were a little late getting here. What happened?
Well, there was and people hear me harp on this all the time. And we did this a couple of years ago. We dedicated a whole month to doing nothing but enforcing the left-hand lane slow poker law. And I don't know what that TCA is. I can look it up in a minute, or you can while I'm talking about it.
Yes.
But and it always fails when you're in a hurry. That's when it happens.
Right.
And when I'm out, when I leave the office and I'm just out kind of tooling around and I'm checking some roads and seeing some people and getting out of the office, never happens. Traffic flow is just like butter. But as soon as I'm in a hurry, where I have to be somewhere, and I know everybody that's listening right now is shaking their head up and down. It's the same thing. Always happens when you're in a hurry. You get behind an individual that's doing less than the speed limit in the left lane.
Right.
And
just so our listeners out there know, we do encourage driving under the speed limit. You just need to be in the right lane, not the fast lane.
Hey, if you want to slow poke and look at the scenery and take the top off your Jeep and just kind of cruise around and take it easy, do it. I love it. I love doing it myself. but do it in the right lane.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it in the left lane.
Yep.
So finally, after all the traffic stacked, I mean, I'm telling you what, it causes more road rage problems than probably anything. I'm guilty of it myself because my blood pressure was still up when I pulled up in the parking lot.
Right.
But it causes more road rage incidents than anything. I would say it's between that and people getting cut off.
Yeah.
You know, people cutting you off, they go around. But a lot of that is due to because there's a slow poker in that lane and traffic stacking up, and people can't get around them.
That's
And
it.
by the time they finally get up there where they can get around them, their blood pressure's through the roof, and they're seeing red, you know. And so anyway, we did this a couple of years ago, and I think I'm going to sit down with my command staff, and I think we're going to dedicate the month of April to enforcing the slowpoke left lane drivers. So basically, if you're in the left-hand lane and you're doing the speed limit and there's traffic behind you and you don't get over and we catch you, we're going to pull you over and we're going to issue you either a warning or a citation, depending on, I'm going to leave that up to the deputy. But you're going to get issued one or the other. And if it's a ticket, you're going to have to pay it or you're going to have to appear in court and tell the judge why you was in the left-hand lane. You'd be surprised how many people, Captain, that don't know that they can't drive in the left-hand lane unless they're passing slower traffic.
Well, and I think that's because we're talking about slow traffic. I think that's because we're living in a time of living in the fast lane. And I'm not just talking about traffic. You know, 30, 40 years ago, if there was a law changed, they put it in the paper, and depending on if you read the Advocate or the DU or both, I'd say 90% of Lawrence Countyans were familiar with the updated law. Times were a little bit slower then, and people appreciated more simple things. But in today's time, where we are living in the fast lane, and if you read news, 6 hours ago, you're reading old news, that does not surprise me. If I pulled over somebody today for, driving too slow, impeding the fast lane, and they said, well, I'm sorry, I didn't know that, I don't think I'd be surprised. Oh, I know I wouldn't be surprised because people are not paying attention.
No, they're not paying attention, and they don't know. And I mean, there's no difference between, sometimes it might be an elderly person, sometimes it's a young person, sometimes you don't know until you get up there and get them on the shoulder and talk to them and educate them. But chances are, if you get stopped for this in the month of April, you're probably going to get a citation or maybe even a written warning to go along with it. We're all in a hurry.
We are.
I'm in a hurry most days. And we got to get to the daycare to get the kids picked up after work. We got to get to the bank before the bank closes
Ball
and make
practice.
that deposit. You got to get to ball practice. You got to get to ball games. There's always some place you got to be. And in a perfect world, you would always have plenty of time to get there. Everything would just fall into place, and you wouldn't be in a hurry. But we all know that's not how it works. So every now and then, I get it. You got to be in a hurry. That's why people speed. Anyway, I'll get off that for a minute.
So to answer,
I'm calmed down now, by the way.
What? I mean, you're still a little flush in the face, but I think you'll be all right. And to answer your question, that's Tennessee Code Annotated 558123.
Read that.
It says, a vehicle shall be driven as nearly as practical entirely within a single lane and shall not be moved from that lane until the driver has first asserted that the movement can be done safely. Upon the roadway that is divided into 3 lanes, a vehicle shall not be driven in the center lane except when overtaking or passing another vehicle. And then it just pretty much, as a lot of laws do, it repeats itself in 3 different languages. So
now, is that the same? That's not the same TCA for driving in one. What's the, help me out with the language? Driving in one lane.
No, this is for multiple lanes of traffic. So basically, at the end of the day, subsection 2 says you are not to be driving in the fast lane except when overtaking or passing another vehicle.
Yeah.
So that's it. If you're a slowpoke driver, if you're a more, let's hold up, that may be kind of rude. If you're a cautious driver, and you don't, if it's 55 and you don't want to drive 55 and you want to drive 50, whether you're cautious or whether you're a lead foot, if you're not overtaking another vehicle, if it's a 4-lane highway, you're supposed to be driving in the right-hand lane.
And we're not saying you can't get in that left-hand lane.
Yeah.
We're just saying that if you're in that left-hand lane and you see traffic coming up your rear view mirror,
Merge right.
all you gotta do is get over.
That's it.
All you gotta do is get over.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna have any problems with that. It's when you continue to stay in that lane and you impede the traffic behind you.
I mean, no different.
And there's no telling how many people I've stopped for this. And I go up and I tell them, look, you know, you're driving in the left-hand lane. You're not supposed to be in the left-hand lane. Left-hand lane's for overtaking slower traffic. Why
That's
would you
it.
be in the left-hand lane? They'll say, well, I was doing the speed limit.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter.
That's right.
Doesn't matter. I don't care if you're doing the speed limit. If you're in the left-hand lane and there's traffic stacking up behind you, you're impeding the flow of traffic, so you need to scoot over. That's all you gotta do.
I no difference
So-
than walking down the halls of church. Okay. All right. If you're walking down the halls of church and there's a bunch of people behind you trying to get to the sanctuary, you're going to be moving over to let some of them younger people, you know, faster people, get in there and get a good seat. And same thing. Move over.
I tell you something else I've been seeing a lot lately, and I think the squatted vehicles, we don't hardly see that anymore since they changed that law.
There's one old boy in town. He drives a white truck, and I'm not going to mention brand or
I think he's
make.
already been cited. Is it a
Hey,
Tahoe or a truck?
It's a truck, and he seems like a pretty nice fella, but it's almost to the point where he may be taunting because he got a talking to. I know for a fact he got a talking to a couple months ago, and I'm not so sure it's not squatted even lower. So
Well,
it's
let me tell you what the judge told me, and it's probably a different vehicle, different person driving. But from my understanding, he'd been cited 2, maybe 3 times for that squatted truck. And the judge told him last time he was up there if he had it fixed, and he said he hadn't had the money or whatever to get it fixed. And he said, if you're up here one more time and that truck still is not fixed, it's not straightened out, I think he told him he was going to take the truck or take his license or something.
really,
Yeah, he's going to put him off the road.
or maybe issue a court order for like kind of like an interlock device.
Something.
You know, they issue
You're not
an
going to
order.
win that battle with the judge.
No.
No, you're not going to win that battle.
I
So I don't see as many vehicles squatted like we did since they changed that law. But I tell you something that I'm seeing more and more of is loud mufflers, or mufflers that are broke or non-existent or whatever. All you got to do is just drive around Lawrenceburg with the windows down.
Yep.
If I turned my deputies loose and I said, just cruise around with the windows down, and anytime you hear a loud muffler, and in the law, and you can pull that up too, and it may have changed since the last time I looked at it,
It hasn't.
but if it's got aftermarket, whatever, Flowmasters or pipes, or what did my
Glass packs.
What did my uncle used to call them? He used to call them drag pipes. Yeah, if you got some of that on there, then and it's excessive. And I mean, I think that's the word that it's used in there. If it's excessive, so if I'm sitting in an intersection and I can hear your vehicle from across the intersection, then that's excessive. And I think a reasonable person would believe that. And that's what I tell my guys, man. I mean, and if you want PC for a stop, just about every vehicle around here
Oh
has
yeah.
got
I mean,
a loud one.
because I'm pretty sure you could also even stop that car under the excessive noise, loud amplification.
Is that an ordinance? Y'all got an ordinance in
Well,
in
that's a
city
state
limits
law.
too, right?
That's also a state law about loud amplification. But TCA 55.9.218, skipping down to section D, for the purpose of this section, excessive or unusual noise includes motor noise emitted by the motor vehicle other than a motorcycle that is noticeably louder than similar vehicles. And some of them nodheads that I graduated high school with, they'd go have dual exhausts put on their trucks, right? And they would go start them up, and I mean, just get them real hot. I'm talking accelerating. And then they take a water hose and they'd shove up into the muffler to bust them glass packs. And it's like you just paid this money to have, you know, dual exhaust put on. Now you're doing something to it that makes it sound worse than.
We used to do the same thing summertime. We just drove through the creek.
Y'all had dual exhaust in Summertown?
We didn't have water hoses. We drove it through the creek. No, I've got a Flowmaster. I think a truck needs to sound like a truck. You know?
Right.
And I've got my truck's got dual exhaust, and I had a one-in dual out Flowmaster put on it, and it's just got a low rumble. I mean, it's not excessive. It's not real loud. It's just got a low rumble, like a truck, like a pickup 4-wheel drive truck's supposed to sound. But when you go overboard, like you said, when you're like doing that kind of stuff, or you're cutting it off back there behind the transmission, or you're running straight pipes or something like that, that's when it's a problem.
And so for some of our visitors and listeners out there, they keep in mind that your vehicle has to have a muffler. So if you think, well, I'll just cut my muffler off and I'll be all right, that's not going to work.
No. Anytime you alter the factory stuff on your vehicle, you're subject to something.
Yeah.
But anyway, any other traffic laws we need to talk about while we're on our high horse on our soapbox?
I think that's pretty much it.
Window tint. I think most people know that window tint. The legal limit of window tint is 35%.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something that people are confused about and they're misled about. And don't get me wrong, there's good guys out there tinting windows, and me personally, boy, I think 20% all the way around looks sharp on a vehicle, especially a black or a white one. But unfortunately, it's illegal. So, like you said, the tint law says you cannot have less than 35% light transmittance through the window. There's a lot of people out there that try to be law-abiding citizens. So you know what they'll do? They'll go to the store and they'll buy 35% tint and they'll put on their vehicles. All right? What they don't know is the federal government says before that vehicle can leave the manufacturer up north, whether it be Ford, Dodge, Chevy, GMC, all of them windows manufactured already have to have manufactured tint of 77% already in the window. 77%, because that cuts down on the glare of the sun. So to our good people out there that try to be law-abiding citizens that go out and buy 35% tint, what they don't know is they're putting 35 on top of 77. So what that does, it brings it down to about 24%. And if you get stopped by a trooper, or you get stopped by a patrolman or a deputy, and they've got a meter, because we have to use that little card starting off, but some of us have window tint meters. When you put that meter on that window, if you put 35% tint on your car, it's going to read somewhere in the range of 24 to 26%, because again, you've put,
learned something new.
There you go. You've put 35 on top of 77, which brings it down to the mid-20s, and you're in violation of the law.
I don't know why. Which I do. I don't know why there isn't more mandate. If you're a professional window tinter and you're in Tennessee, you shouldn't even be able to get anything less than 35%.
You think?
In my opinion, that way the liability is not on you. I mean, if the customer comes and says, "I want the absolute darkest tint that you can put on my vehicle," I would say, "Well, it's 35%. That's it. That's
right.
As dark as I can go, because that's the legal limit." If you want to get it somewhere else, go south. I think it's 20% in Florida, or 25.
I didn't know that.
It's less in Florida, but and then the strip across the top, right? It's not supposed to be below that.
Below that ASI line. Or AS1 line, depending on where you're at in the country. Right. And it's my understanding that above the ASI line, it can be darker than 35%. But you can't go below it, and that's pretty much where that conversation ends. But no, that's a good question / statement that you made. Is these people out here that are doing windows, they shouldn't be able to get tint, that would put somebody under 35. And so I did a little digging, and the reason that they can, And the reason that darker tint is pushed is for security reasons. There are a lot of hospitals, there are a lot of government agencies that will put dark tint on their business windows where it's a whole lot harder to see in than it is to see out. So that is why tint a lot darker than 35% is just as readily available as the rest of them.
I got you. Well, I know it's a problem for us stopping vehicles with really dark tint. Matter of fact, if I get up there and I can't see inside the vehicle, I can't tell you how many occupants are in there.
That's
if
it.
they're men or women, black or white. If I can't tell anything about the occupants in that vehicle, I'll just step back and have the driver hop out. I'm not going to stay around up there and not know what's behind those tinted windows.
Generally what I do is I bang on the driver's side or the passenger side rear quarter panel and just say, hey driver, roll down all your windows, I can't see. And you know, at the end of the day, if we didn't have bad people out there shooting cops, I don't even think we'd have this law on the books.
Probably not.
I really don't. And this is one of the few laws that I honestly think is pretty much solely for officer safety. Because I'll go forward, or I'll go further with this, there are a lot of people in the state of Tennessee that are exempt from that law. And I won't go into detail because...
From the winter tent law?
Yes, sir. I won't go into detail because that number will double after I get through saying...
So what, do they get a card or something and they show you? Kind of like a medical marijuana card?
Something like that. Something like that. But I can remember the first time I ever encountered this situation. And listen, I pulled this guy over 25 times just to show you that I never... went after people just solely on who they were. It was a traffic violation, and I'd pull people over. It was back when I was a K-9 officer, just trying my darndest to get dope off the street. And window tint was always one of my easiest ones for probable cause.
Oh, yeah, sure it is.
I bet you I pulled this guy over 50 times. I mean, you'd think I would have learned, this vehicle with, this personalized tag, blah, 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 blah. No, I seen tinted windows, I'd swing around, pull them over. But yes, he, matter of fact, him and his wife was exempt, and that just blew my mind. And again, I'm not going to go into detail, but yeah.
We used to work the interstate, and I used to sit and watch traffic. It's totally different on the interstate.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different animal out there. But I remember the guy that I was working with, he pulled up in the medium with me and he said, well, what's the plan for today? Or something like that. It was early in the morning. I said, I think I'm gonna focus on window tint because we'd been through a little bit of a dry spell. Neither one of us had got a big load of drugs or contraband or whatever off the interstate. So I said, I think I'm just gonna mix it up and I'm gonna just focus on window tint. And he kind of chuckled and he said, man, it's going to be a long day for you. You're going to be stopping the heck out of vehicles.
Right.
And I said, I know. So that's what I done. And it was just one of those days. We used to just sit and watch traffic and profile traffic and pick them out.
Mm-hmm.
But I decided that day I was just going to run just as hard as I could go. And I was going to hit the medium, window tint, hit the medium, window tint. And I was just going to be stopping them and cutting them loose, stopping them and cutting loose till that third vehicle I stopped. I got 4 pounds of weed out of a cooler behind the back seat.
Very good.
Fourth vehicle.
Right. Right.
So when I called him up there at the traffic stop and I said, hey, come up here and back me up. I got something. And he come up there and we found that. And he said, well, I guess I'm gonna be stopping window tint today with you then.
In state or out of state?
No, they were they were locals, but they was like 3 counties out.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think they was from up around Williamson County or something. They went down to Alabama and bought it and was headed back up.
Well, back then,
Stopped for window tint.
3 or 4 pounds of grass, that was a pretty good
Oh,
lick.
yeah. It's not like today. Hey, now all you find is THC vapes.
Right.
And gummies.
So I seen you 2 weeks ago at the shelter event. How about that?
Yeah, it was a big night.
That was a big night.
Yeah, they did good.
They showed up, showed out, knocked it out of the park, in my opinion.
They did good. I don't remember what their tally was and how much money they raised, but they did really good. And it went pretty good too. I mean, as far as banquets go,
Right.
everything just kind of flowed pretty good.
It
and
did.
And that speaker that they had, that guest speaker, that domestic violence victim, that was a pretty cool story.
To stand up there in front of a group of 500 or 600 people and share some of the most horrific times in your life. I don't, I have no problem speaking. I have no problem speaking in front of people, but I can't recall the last time I aired some distressful stuff about my life in front of people, and to see this young lady get up there and not only tell about some really hard times in her life, but to do it in the presence of 500 or 600 people. That, in my opinion, she's no longer a victim. She's adapted and overcame, and I think that is a success story. That's no longer a story of being a victim. That is a story of success.
No, yeah, it was a good time. It was a good story. They had the speaker did really good. Everybody really did good, I thought, and it wasn't overly long.
Food was good too.
Sometimes you get to some of those fundraisers, banquets and stuff, and you get an individual up there that just loves to hear himself talk, and
right.
can't get them all. I don't do that. I'm up there and I say you can almost guarantee I'm gonna keep mine around 15 minutes.
That's it. Do the KISS method.
When you start seeing people on their cell phones, that's your indicator. I'll wrap it up.
I'm telling you, that burns me up to see a speaker up there taking care of business, and then you look down and right in front of him or her, you've got like 4 or 5 people on their cell phones, not paying attention, just being disrespectful.
Yep.
And that's a whole nother story. But
did you have any storm damage? Man, I tell you what, last weekend was a ride.
That was a ride, wasn't it?
And before we say anything, I just want to give a shout out to everybody. Well, I want to give a shout out to a bunch of people for that weekend. Up front, I want to say, a little shout out to Bill Phillips and Shelton Barnett. I mean, they were camped out in that war room or whatever they call it over at the EOC building, and they were just on top of it,
They always are.
And then Fred and Ben over at Tennessee River News, Tennessee River Valley. I'm sorry if I misspoke. But
Tennessee
anyway,
Valley.
They did a great job too, making sure they was communicating the weather when it came in. And I'm telling you, we were so lucky in our area. And I know a lot of people weren't lucky.
Right.
But the way that they had that Friday night, the storms, how they went north to us and really pounded Arkansas and Missouri. Mm-hmm. And then the storms that they predicted stayed south of us and down into Mississippi and Alabama and northern Georgia. So it could have really been bad.
So I own a pretty big building here in town that was formerly a church, and it's got a really nice basement and everything. And the storm system got my wife's attention, and by it getting her attention, I was being a daddy and a husband. I'm like, well, it's gonna be a long night, but I'd rather err on the side of caution. So we went and stayed in the basement of the church building, and wrote it out. But mentioning Shelton and mentioning Ben, there's pretty much 3 people that I try to communicate with when that weather is getting rough. That's Jesus, Shelton Barnett, and Ben Luna.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good way of looking at it. Yeah, it was just, and I mean, we still got tons of rain and had all kinds of roads that got washed and driveways that got washed out. Driving around town, you see a lot of people with shingles missing. I think I had a piece of trim on one of the eaves on my house that got blowed off, and that was pretty much it. But there was a lot of people that weren't lucky, north of us and south of us from them storms. But just looking at the damage on. I called our county road superintendent Monday morning, Ryan Crick, and asked him. I told him. I said, "Listen, if you need any help," I said, "I know you've got a lot of work to do on the roads and culverts and tiles and low water bridges and stuff around the county. But I went around Sunday morning, got out bright and early and rode around on some of the back roads and checked them, but." I called him and said, "Listen, if you need any help with traffic control or whatever, I'll make sure you got it." I said, I imagine you got a pretty busy, a full plate. And he goes, I've got 2 full pages of call-ins.
Wow.
That people's called in of damage, either the roads washed or the culverts washed or the tiles washed out, you know. So I said, well, look, we'll come out and give you a hand as far as traffic control goes. You just let us know. But those guys right there, they were out all weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to be busy for the next couple of months.
Oh yeah,
just,
no doubt.
Just getting debris, moving debris, and fixing roads. And
He seems to be doing a pretty good job.
yeah,
A lot of people
so.
are pleased with what Brian's
I think
doing.
so. He gets on top of stuff pretty quick. I had him fix some potholes in front of the courthouse the other day.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he's right on top of it.
That,
Sent the guys out there with a shovel and some asphalt to fill them in. There was one, so every time you'd pull out of the sheriff's office, you'd hit it and it'd knock your coffee in your console. Man, that'll cause some problems too. I mean, I think I blew 1 or 2 fuses over that.
Just you know, several times on here we've made a shout out to our utility people. You know, LUS. They're always you know, when they're getting called out, it ain't because it's sunny weather and you know people are playing golf, but you know that just goes to the same, you know, road as Ryan's crew is, you know, them guys have to come out on weekends and you know, in bad weather to fix that stuff because people can't get out, go to town, and so on and so forth. So a big shout out to our county road crew.
I was glued to social media and the radio that weekend. I was either at the house or I was out in it pretty much the whole weekend. I went to a kind of a private event at an establishment here in town that's going to be opening soon, and it was Saturday before the weather moved in, and I got there, and of course I say everybody, there was probably 20 people in there because it was kind of an invitation only, and then they were having a few drinks, and they were bringing food out and stuff, and I walked in and ordered a water, and it was all like, what, you can't come in here and, you know, and then hang out and unwind and relax for a little while? And I said, when was the last time you looked at the weather?
Right.
I said, an hour it's going to be here.
Right.
Some of us have got to be responsible.
It's and that's funny you brought that up. So, you know, like you, I'm getting some age on me, and
I don't know what you're talking about.
Last summer we were supposed to have my 20th high school reunion, and I don't know if you remember it, but back in the middle of the summer we had some tornadoes to come through here and to come through northern Tennessee, and I think we ended up losing like 11 Tennesseans with that storm system that came through, and you know, some of the guys and gals that was putting that event together, they were like, "So, what is your opinion? What do you think?" And of course, again, I'm reaching out to Shelton, I'm reaching out to Ben, I'm reaching out to some other people trying to figure out what's going on. Long story short, we ended up calling it off, and I'm so glad we did because that was. Do you remember that? It came through over around the library and knocked a ton of trees down.
Yeah,
Power
took out that white fence right there at the corner of Springer and Pulaski Highway.
So that was that night, and you know, thank the Lord above, we didn't lose anybody from Lawrence County, but we were supposed to be in a certain building on the square that is 175 years old, and I could just picture, you know, bricks flying, buildings tumbling and everything else, you know, from this storm system that's going to come in. And
well, I was supposed to grill steaks for a couple of my deputies Saturday night.
Really?
And,
how do you get that privilege?
We had to postpone it. So I got steaks that I had to put in the freezer. I hate putting steaks in the freezer, but I had to. No, they caught this guy that we've been after for a while. And it's been a few months ago, and I told them, I told the wrong 2 deputies. That's what I did. I should have told 2 other deputies because these guys right here, they just, you know, they love to hunt these guys. So anyway, we've been after this knucklehead for months, and he keeps evading us. I think we'd chased him a couple of times into another county and lost him, but I told him, I said, I said, first one to arrest him, I said, yours truly is gonna grill you one of my world famous ribeyes. Well, that night, I got a picture of him sitting in the back seat of a patrol car.
Okay.
So, and I got reminded of it the other day that I hadn't that I hadn't grilled him that steak. So I said, well, all right, Saturday night. I said, just come on. Well, here comes the tornado Saturday night,
Right.
so we didn't get to do it. But
Have you ever had a ribeye cooked in a cast iron skillet?
I don't know if I ever.
Oh my God! I have not cooked a ribeye on my grill in probably 6 or 7 years.
Really?
Yes, sir. Every time
I see the TikTok videos of people doing
every
it.
time we cook ribeye, which is not a lot. Have you priced ribeyes like? Well, you went and bought some.
I went and bought.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly
It was
what they cost.
$34 for 2 ribeyes when we went and bought them the other day.
Well, I got a green egg, and I'm here to tell you, and I buy those tomahawks.
Oh,
The big ones.
really?
Yeah. And let me tell you something, a tomahawk on that green egg is the absolute best thing you'll ever try. I mean, it is so
A
good.
tomahawk period is pretty.
Yeah, well, I
pretty
mean,
darn
they're really heavy, they're really thick,
Right,
you know, so
right.
you're looking at 4 or 5 inches, so you gotta lay them out early,
Uh-huh.
so you can get the temperature down some. And then you can't just, it's not a 500 degree, 2 or 3 minutes on each side. You gotta lower your temperature, and then you gotta flip them. I mean, it takes a little bit of know-how once you get it, but man, let me tell you something, once you get it down, that'd be the best steak you ever had.
So in the cast iron skillet, the trick is to try to get that skillet as close as to 500 degrees as possible. And I can have you one of the most mouth-watering medium rare ribeye. And you got to be careful because it sears it so perfectly that if that first cut into that ribeye, if you do it wrong, everything that is around that knife is going to shoot in your face. That's how much it locks in the juice.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, how about you just cook me one sometime, and I'll see if you're telling the truth or not.
Okay, and then you can return the favor, and we'll see if that tomahawk is.
Sounds like a plan.
All right.
I just got back from TSA training last week.
How's that?
You know, we got our mandated stuff that we go to. A lot of people probably don't know that even though when you're sheriff, you still got to go through your in-service training, just like anybody else. Doesn't matter if you're sheriff, chief of police, doesn't matter. If you're a law enforcement officer in the state of Tennessee, you still got to go through your mandatory training, including your 40 hours and your all the other stuff that we have to have. So they include that up in Franklin. And then they usually bring down a guest speaker. We had a woman, I can't think of her name, she came down and she's a law professor, a constitutional law professor. She also wrote a book. Done an amazing job. Heck of a 2-hour block of instruction. Well, I think it was a little bit longer than that. But I tell people know, if you know John Myers, you know I'm a constitutional sheriff. I always tell people that up front. You know, that's how I always said if I was ever in this position, that's how I would operate, and that's how I operate. Because your sheriff, the sheriff in your county is the lead law enforcement officer. Nobody outranks the sheriff. It doesn't matter if it doesn't matter who comes into the county, the sheriff is the head law enforcement officer of that county. And it's our duty to uphold the Constitution, the United States Constitution and the Tennessee Constitution. And they're very similar.
They are.
And that was something that she kind of pointed out. And she talked about the United States Constitution, where the laws were made up prior to that. You know, they didn't just dream the United States Constitution up out of the thin blue air. They took laws from
England,
from England, you know, where the sheriff was where that name started. And I don't know
Sheriff.
the sheriff is what it was called, sheriff. But anyway, so she broke it down about how those they kind of mirrored a lot of the stuff, you know, from there and put it in the United States Constitution. Of course, the state constitution, you know, mirrors a lot of the United States Constitution. But it was very interesting, you know. Even though I keep up with a lot of that stuff and I try to stay in tune with it, just hearing a speaker get up there and talk about it and being able to show you proof about how things were written.
And that's where it gets cool. okay? Because like in college, part of my criminal justice program was constitutional law. And one of the things that was so easily identifiable is that the constitutions of Florida and Tennessee are so similar. It's eerie. And actually, in my opinion, I think some citizens have a few more rights in Florida that we don't have. But they don't have constitutional carry, so you can go back and forth. But constitutional law amazes me. And this is probably where I'm fixing to, if you're a liberal, 10 and 2, if you're driving down the road, because I'm fixing to say something that's going to make you very unhappy. But to show you how much I do pay attention to constitutional law, after I get the youngins in bed, this is the type of stuff I sit up and drink sweet tea to, have a dip, and watch on it. Did you know that President Trump can have a third term as president and it be constitutionally sound?
Never knew that.
Yes. So our Constitution says that no man shall be elected, or the amendment to it, excuse me, shall be elected more than 2 terms now after FDR. And I think it was Truman is when they made the law, and he was exempt because it said not pertaining to the president that's currently in office, which they didn't even nominate him for a 3rd term. But anyways, constitutionally legal. Trump, after this 2nd term, he can run as someone's vice president. He can run with somebody else as their vice president. And if that guy gets elected and immediately steps down, Trump becomes president, and it will be constitutionally sound.
I didn't know
that blew my socks. I'm, in my living room, about a couple of weeks ago, with a dip and a sweet tea, and I'm sitting there making noise like, oh my God, this is good, and trying not to wake up the kids and make my wife angry, because she gets angry so much.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that. Which,
Yep.
I mean, whether it's legal or not, I mean, it doesn't matter in my opinion. I mean, I think the consensus view right now with law enforcement is we finally feel like we've got an administration right now.
Amen.
In D.C. that's got our back for the first time in a long time. I'm going up tomorrow. I'm on a law enforcement roundtable with Bill Haggerty's office. And,
Sweet.
and a couple other sheriffs, and they wanted to have a meeting tomorrow, so I'm gonna go up to Nashville and talk a little bit about the. I don't know. Are you familiar with the 287G? The 287G is. I'll break it down to you. That's been a hot topic with the sheriffs of late. Give me just a minute. Let me find it. I had it pulled up here. 287G is the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996. Added Section 287G to the Immigration and Nationality Act, authorizing U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement to delegate to state and local law enforcement officers the authority to perform specified immigration officer functions under the agency's direction and oversight. 287G program enhances the safety and security of our nation's communities by allowing ICE enforcement and removal operations to partner with state and local law enforcement agencies to identify and remove criminal aliens who are something to be removed from the U.S. So basically, it's ICE. Basically, the feds are saying we want the local law enforcement to help us out.
And I think we should.
Well,
We have a duty.
Sure you do, and I've even went a little bit further than that. And I don't know that a lot of people probably don't know this, but our jail is a little underpopulated right now. When I first took office, we have a capacity of 262 inmates, and within 2 years after I took office, we were in the 330s. And then, of course, COVID comes down, and the courts reduce sentences and reinstate probation on a lot of them, and they're out. But our numbers have been under capacity since COVID. And so I met with our U.S. Marshals in Tennessee back in February and scheduled them to come down and look at our jail and see if we qualify to hold some federal prisoners. So that's in the works.
A little federal money never
it's
hurts.
just, I feel like we need to do our part when we can, because this is a workload that we're all going to have to jump in and get our hands dirty with. I mean, when you're talking 20 million that's come into our country illegally,
at least,
you got to look at those numbers. I'm not saying there's 20 million really bad people.
I agree.
And I'm not saying there's 20 million really good people. But out of that percentage of 20 million, there's a lot of them that don't need to be here. There's a lot of them that shouldn't be here. There's a lot of them that came across the border illegally for a reason. There's a reason why they didn't come through a legal port of entry and do it the legal way.
And before some of our listeners out there start, twitching in their seat, we're not just talking about one ethnicity here. We're not just talking about one race here, okay? Of these 20 plus million, you pretty much got populations represented across the entire earth.
That trip that I took to Eagle Pass last year with Bill Haggerty's office, this group of people, it was me and 5 or 6 other sheriffs and some county executives from across the state, and of course his staff. There was probably 25 of us flew down to the border, and then went down to Eagle Pass. I don't remember if you remember.
I remember you talking about it. That was crazy.
Yeah, where they had the National Guard down there, and it was such an eye-opening experience to actually put your feet on the ground down there where it was at. One thing that I didn't expect is I honestly thought the military, and this was a big effort. I mean, it's the military, it's the Texas State Police, it's the local sheriff's deputies, it's the fish and game. I mean, a whole bunch of state and federal people down there, including the military. And I honestly kind of expected a lot of the boots on the ground to be not very vocal about it. But it was the exact opposite. Everybody down there wanted you to know how big that problem was down there. We met with a rancher.
Is this the guy that owns 55,000 acres?
55,000 acre ranch, man. And he stood there and told us about the experiences he's had and the people that he's seen. I mean, the Asian people, the Middle Eastern people. It's not just Hispanics. It's that Mexico was a hub for a long time for everybody to come to and then slip into our country. There's absolutely no telling what's in this country.
Yes, sir.
There's no telling what's in this country. When you open the door and let everybody in for 4 years, there's no telling what's here.
And that's what's scary. Not only just the people who want the worst that can come to America. We know they're here, but it's also the middle-aged, military-aged men that are here right now. Not knowing what they're going to do, they're just wandering around here waiting on their next order, and that's that. To me, that's almost as scary as someone who already professes to be a terrorist.
I'm anxious to see how much meth and fentanyl go up in price over the next.
That's a good point.
Year and a half. That's what I'm waiting to see. That's of course that's another big topic with the sheriffs when we all get together. And I made the comment, I can't wait to see the day when meth and fentanyl are so expensive nobody can afford it.
And it's so funny you bring that up, because I was actually speaking with somebody about this same topic 2 days ago, and it started off, why has our homeless population just went through the roof? Not just here in Lawrence County, but across the state of Tennessee. And their point of view was it is because of 2 things. One, drugs are more readily available than they were 20 years ago, and then they're cheaper than they have ever been. And, you know, we went back and forth, and it was like, well, what about this? And then it was like, well, what about the, you know, 20 years ago, meth was between, you know, $100 and $110 a gram. Right now, you can get an 8-ball of meth for about $110, which to my good people out there, that's 3.5 grams. You know, we were going back and forth. I don't know the answer. Is it just as simple as the reason our homeless population across the state of Tennessee has just exploded is because dope is here more and it's here cheaper and it's pure.
And it's
more pure.
And it's the type of drugs and it's the long-term effects of using methamphetamine and fentanyl, what it does to your brain, and how long it takes for your brain to recover and repair itself.
Yep.
A lot of times it don't. You know, you talk to medical people and they'll tell you, you know, sometimes that you can't come back
Right.
from that kind of abuse to your body. Your body just won't heal up. You know, they say if you quit smoking, if you smoke a pack of cigarettes a day for 20 years and you quit, and I don't remember the number, but it's not that long. It's not but just a few years. Your lungs look brand new. Yeah,
really?
I mean, yeah, they'll heal themselves up. You know, same thing with the rest of your body. I mean, when you damage it for so long, it's got to have time to recover.
Right.
Sometimes with what we're seeing with methamphetamine and fentanyl, it's just your body can't.
Brain damage is brain damage.
You can't fix it. And I think that's the biggest reason. I mean, our country's been flooded with those two drugs for 4 years, and talking about the price drop, we've seen the biggest price drop in methamphetamine, which you didn't hardly see much fentanyl when I took office.
Right.
You didn't see a lot
Right.
of it even when Biden took office. But during the time when Biden took office until now, it's been flooded.
It's exploded.
It's the drug. Well, methamphetamine is still the drug of choice right now, but fentanyl is a close second. And I think the only reason why fentanyl hasn't surpassed methamphetamine is because everybody knows the dangers of fentanyl. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen anybody overdose and die on methamphetamine, but fentanyl, it's a totally different animal.
Right.
Totally different animal.
You know,
I think that's the biggest reason why it hasn't took over methamphetamine is just because everybody knows how dangerous it is.
And it's crazy. You know, when I first started buying dope, legally, hold on,
as a law enforcement
as a
officer.
undercover law enforcement officer. I'm glad you clarified. An ounce of dope was $2,200. Okay, all right, 28 grams was $2,200, and it was floating anywhere between 84 and 91% pure. And I can remember, and it was either 2016 or 2000, I think it was 2016, getting a call from a federal agent where I had submitted dope to Quantico, and they're like, "You're not gonna believe this. This dope came back 100% pure." And it was like a light bulb went off. Because in 2000 and, I don't know, 2008, 2006, somewhere around there, when I was buying dope for the first time, $2,200 a gram, or excuse me, $2,200 an ounce, and I paid much less for this dope, and it was more pure. And it was like, what in the world? This goes against economics. You're getting a quote unquote.
Was that your first time with Mexican ice?
No, that was not my first time with Mexican ice. We just it was different people. It was a different group. Okay, it was a different group that wasn't connected with some of the other Hispanic guys that were known to produce methamphetamine in this area, and it was just, I can just remember it blowing my socks off that we were getting better dope for a cheaper price. And then I had a young lady here in Lawrenceburg, not going to mention no names, whenever we talked to her, she said, "You're fixing to start buying dope for $300 an ounce." And I'm like, "Chick, you've lost your mind. There is no way we're going to be buying an ounce of dope, you know, for $300. And
what did she know you didn't know?
Buddy, listen, she was 3 years ahead of the game.
Yeah. Well, I can remember the first time I saw Mexican ice, and I was on the interstate. Now, I was kind of detached from the homegrown, or the shake and bake dope,
Mhm.
you know, that people were buying Sudafed.
Right.
I do remember we stopped this young couple on the interstate headed north, and they had 2 black garbage bags full of Sudafed.
Really?
They had made a road trip all the way down, they were from Kentucky, all the way down into Tennessee, into North Alabama, North Mississippi, and come back, and they'd stopped at every little dollar store, every little, that's before
That's with the blister packs.
yeah.
And behind the counter.
And where you didn't have to show a driver's license, you didn't have to show ID, you didn't have to do anything. And they had 2 garbage bags.
That's a hit.
That they were headed back up to Kentucky with. But then you fast forward to when it was my last really good stop on the interstate. I remember looking at these 3 bricks, and I thought I had kilos of cocaine. And we'd already had the guys arrested as soon as we saw it, and we put them in cuffs and put them in the back seat. And I remember when I cut into that duct tape and cellophane and peeled it open, and it looked like rock salt, and I was like, well, this isn't cocaine.
Right.
And I had never seen it before. Of course, we had a field test, and it popped hot for meth.
Mhm.
And I called my boss, and I said, I got a pretty good load up here. What do you want to do with it? And we wound up doing a controlled delivery in Nashville with it. But that was my first experience. I'd never seen it before. And then you fast forward to when now I'm sheriff, and I've seen firsthand how much is in our community.
Mhm.
And it's going to stay there until it gets so high that you can't afford it. My question is what's going to take its place when it gets so high that you can't afford it. What's somebody going to come up with and invent?
So it'll be a synthetic. There's not a doubt in my mind. I'll stand flat-footed, and I'll put my next house payment on it. It'll be a synthetic.
Maybe we need to get a recent recovered doper in here. Somebody that's bought dope, sold dope, used dope. Maybe somebody that's in the know, that's recently cleaned up and got straight.
Right. Right.
And bring them in here and get their
That's a good idea.
get an idea.
Let them tell the public firsthand, you know, what they went through. Anyway, what they went through before and what they've experienced after. But anyways, I guess that
Are we about out of time?
I think we're
already?
about out of time, Sheriff.
Daggone.
That went
We
quick.
got to telling war stories and we got Bobby Lovell. I got to tell you, we got Bobby Lovell. We've been looking for Bobby Lovell, and he was asleep in his car out at the new college, and they went over and tapped on the window and got him out and brought him in. Bobby Lovell's back in jail.
And Jesus loves him. Say bye.
Chuck Schumer called the decision horrible. The president signing